Stop! What am I doing soloing on this thing? Isn't this a beginning guitar video? Didn't you get here because you did a search for how to play guitar or guitar tutorial vid or something like that? And how many times have you found some video that you think is going to help you out, and instead of breaking it down and teaching you what it is you need to do, it's just some douchebag sitting there pretending he knows how to solo and boosting his own ego? Well, that's not what we're about here. You want to play guitar and we're going to help you play guitar. We're going to start from the beginning. We're going to go over everything. We're going to give you the exercises you need and the examples to show exactly what we're doing, and we're going to get you rolling with guitar. I don't claim to be the best guitarist in the world, but I'm hoping I can help you out. Welcome to Viking Guitar University. So why play guitar? There are a lot of different instruments out there, but I'll tell you what, the first reason you play guitar is because it's cool. Look at this thing. It's awesome, and you know it is, and you want to play it. Guitar is a cool instrument to play for a lot of reasons. Every instrument is cool, but this one has a few special features. First off, with the guitar, you have 6 strings. That means that not only can you play one note at a time, but you can play multiple notes at a time, like chords. How pleasing is that? The other cool thing about guitar is that you can use it in almost any genre. You can play it in rock, jazz, blues, metal, classical, 80s synth pop. It doesn't matter. There's a guitar in there if you've heard it on the radio, chances are. The other thing about guitar that makes it a lot of fun is that it's really expressive. In addition to playing a whole bunch of different genres, you can play different feels in it. You can go super aggressive, you can really dig in and get some notes out of it. You can pull back and be very emotional, very smooth. You can do all sorts of stuff. The other nice thing on a purely technical level that I really like about guitar, as opposed to, say, piano, is that you can bend notes. Bending notes is awesome. It takes a phrase like this and makes it, which is just a little extra coolness right there. So that's why I like guitar. I don't know why you're getting into it. You might be under some gypsy curse and need to do it in order to free yourself. It could be part of a will you need to learn. I don't know. The point is, probably you're holding a guitar right now as you're watching this video and you're asking when we're actually going to get to the guitar stuff. So let's get to the guitar stuff. Before we can play guitar, you need to understand a little bit about how it works and what the parts are. In a nutshell, guitar works with strings. There's tension on the strings. Starts up here, ends down there, and based on what that tension is, that determines what pitch it rings at when you pluck it. Now, the reason that you use your left hand is because you can fret at different notes and limit the tension of that string, thus changing the note. That way, you can have on one string all the different notes. All right there. It's not like a harp where you have a different string for each note. So let's start with the anatomy here. At the very top of the guitar, this is called the headstock, because it's the head. The headstock is just basically up here. It's what holds the tuning pegs, which you use to tune the strings to the proper tension. This part right here is called the nut. The nut is the upper tension point of the strings. The tuning pegs actually determine what the tension is, but this is the point where it actually locks in the tension. Now, this nut here for this specific guitar locks down to further stabilize it. Coming down, we have the neck. The neck kind of refers to this whole thing right here, but the part of the neck that you're probably most interested in is the fretboard. The fretboard is this part on front right here, and it's got individual metal frets on it. Sometimes people refer to frets as this whole block right here, but it's actually just the metal part. What a fret does is when you place your finger down on it, it creates a tension point at that metal bit right there, and now that is the new length of the string. You do it there, it's there, so forth and so on. Now, since there's a whole lot of frets, this one has 22, most guitars have fret markings of some sort. They're going to be on the actual fingerboard here, as well as usually on the side there will be markings as well. They tend to be on the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 12th, and then 15th, 17th, 19th, 21st, and then 24th if you have 24 frets. The neck joins to the body of the guitar, which is the main part that has a shape that could be a V or an X or whatever it is you happen to have. There are a few different ways the neck can be attached. This is a bolt-on. You can also have ones that are made of a single piece of wood all the way through, a few other styles, personal preference. Another thing about the neck that's important to look at is how it's finished on the back. Whether it's a natural wood finish, just sanded and waxed, or if it's painted all the way up, lacquered. Each thing has a different type of feel, and that's something you kind of need to figure out for yourself what you like. So now we get down to the body. The most important thing about the body right here is the lower connection point of the strings, and that is called the bridge. There are a whole bunch of different types of bridges. If you're watching this and holding your guitar, look down at your bridge. Does it look like this? If not, that's okay. It'll still work. It's just the lower tension point. The strings connect to the bridge, up through the nut, and up to the tuning pegs, and that's the basis of the guitar right there. On an electric guitar such as this, the other important thing are the pickups. What pickups are is they're a series of magnets, and what they do is when you pluck a string, it'll amplify that sound and send it out the output jack here. So when it goes to the amplifier or whatever it is you're recording into, it actually sends that signal sound. There are two knobs on a lot of guitars. You could have more, less, I don't know. One usually controls the volume and one usually controls the tone, which is how bright or how warm the sound is. The switch right here is going to be a pickup selector switch that selects whether it's this pickup, both of them, or this one. If you have 3 pickups or 100 or whatever, you'll probably have more positions on the switch to figure that out. On the back of the guitar, there's a couple of different cavities here, usually with a plate on it. One is going to cover where the springs are if it's a floating bridge, which this is. Don't worry too much about floating bridges right now. We'll get into that down the road. The point is, if you have springs in the back, they connect to the bridge. The other thing here is going to have some of the electronics. You can tell it's right on the back side of where the knobs and the switch are. So it has the wiring for that. It's also going to have a battery compartment in there if your pickups run on batteries, which some of them do. And here's a quick point. If your guitar suddenly stops making noise, or it's sounding crappy, and then it stops making noise, and you don't know what's wrong, first thing you do, take this thing off, try swapping out the battery, because chances are it's that, before you go to a repair tech. Last but not least, we've got our strap pegs up here. That's where you can connect a strap to it, so you can hang it over your shoulder and stand up and have it ride high up here and look really weird, or down low past your knees and look really cool but not be able to play it. And in a nutshell, those are the different parts of the guitar. Now, before we actually get to playing the guitar, you need to know how to hold the guitar. As you can tell, this is a kind of a normal Stratocaster type shape, and I'm holding it in this manner between my legs that is referred to as classical style. The other way people tend to hold guitars is over on their right leg, or their left leg if they're left-handed and the guitar neck is sticking out that way. Either way is fine. Do whatever's comfortable for you. I don't prefer this style because it tends to limit my arm access as I'm getting to the upper frets. I tend to hit my body, whereas if I do it here, I have a lot more space. That being said, it's totally up to you. One other thing you'll probably notice is if you're just starting to play a guitar, you might be doing this thing a bit more because you want to be looking at what's going on here and seeing where your fingers are. That's something you want to try to avoid because it really limits your ability to reach around the neck, to pluck properly, and it's just overall bad habit. So what you want to do is kind of have that thing vertical and snugged up against your body right there. If you need to look at the fretboard or the fingerboard or anything like that, you can just lean over a bit, look down at it. It doesn't have to be like this. And speaking of the neck, left hand's going to be on the neck. There are a couple different types of ways you can hold it. One is to take it and take the C of your hand right there and just put it right up against the neck, palm it, and just wrap your hand around just like you're holding it. That's one way to do it. You can play a lot of chords like this. No problem. Thumb stays up across the top the whole time and you just do what you need to with your fingers. The downside to this is that it doesn't allow a whole lot of stretch. If you look at it, I've got my index finger on the 3rd fret here and it's kind of wonky, and then my pinky on the 7th fret and it's also kind of wonky. It's this weird position here. That's not a whole lot of reach right there. And there are times when you're going to want more reach instead of the stability this offers. The other way to do it is to take your hand, place the thumb against the back of the neck, and now what you can do is you can reach much better. As you can see, that way I can reach from the 3rd to the 8th instead of the 3rd to the 7th, and it's a lot more stable. So those are the 2 basic ways to hold it. You can do variations of those. You don't have to have the thumb wrapped all the way around or braced right down at the back. Do what feels comfortable. Just keep in mind there's a couple different positions that you can use if one thing isn't working for what you're trying to do at the time. Last thing is the pick. You don't have to play with the pick. You can finger pick if you want to, but for most of these lessons we're going to be using a pick because a lot of guitarists do that. If you take a look at this thing, it's kind of this triangular shape. And you want to just kind of grab it with the thumb up top, curl your index finger around the bottom like that, and then you're going to use it to pick the strings. The angle of which you pick the strings is going to kind of vary depending on what you're doing. If you can pick it straight across, it's called flat picking, or do a bit of a rotated angle. I'm using my elbow to exaggerate. That's not what you really want to do. But if you rotate it a bit, it's not quite as much resistance. There's all sorts of different types of picks. Try a bunch of stuff you like, see what you like. What I'm using right now is a Pick Boy weirdo Swiss cheese grip type thing, and this is a 1mm pick. I like it because it doesn't fall out of my hands. It doesn't flop around too much when I'm picking the strings. A thinner pick will flop and kind of, I don't know. It has its own uses. I don't like thin picks too much. I like thick picks. And this also has a really pointy tip, which is just another preference thing. But go to local music store, guitar store, bring 10 bucks with you, buy one of each pick you can find, as different as they can be, test them out, see what you like. The last thing, before we actually get started playing something, is a little public service announcement about guitar playing and musicianship in general. Playing guitar is awesome, and I love it, and it's cool, and I love it, and it's awesome. But it's all about what you put into it. There are times when it's really frustrating and times when you want to quit. It's okay to take a break. But when it comes down to it, you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. If you buy this thing, you have it sitting in your room, you pick it up maybe once or twice a week and pluck around with it for 5 minutes and then put it down, that's probably the level you're going to be at for a long time. I'm not saying to sit down and every day put 8 or 10 hours into it, but there is a direct correlation. The other important thing about being a musician in general is don't be a dick. There are a lot of different genres out there. Everyone's at a different skill level. You're going to have stuff you like, stuff you don't like. People are going to be better than you and be jerks about it. People are going to be better than you and be super cool about it. You don't have to play into that stuff. Just play music, enjoy it for yourself. Don't get caught up in which genre is better or which guitarist is better or anything like that. It's just about getting better at music and having fun. Along those lines, you need perseverance, but you also need to be really critical of yourself. Without the perseverance, you're not going to put in the time you need to get really good. But without being critical of yourself, you're going to kind of gloss over things. A lot of times when I find myself feeling animosity towards some other musician about what they're able to do, it's because they're doing something I can't do. And that whole, well, I'm not good at it just because I haven't practiced it thing is no good. You're not good at it because you haven't practiced it, but that doesn't mean that you can't practice it and get good at it. Pay attention to what areas of your playing are weak, which areas need work, and which areas probably you could pull back on a bit because it's kind of locked in. Focus on what your weaknesses are. That brings us to our last point, the pinky. On your hand here, probably your left hand if you're right-handed, this is going to be your fretting hand, and you're going to be using these 4 fingers most of the time. The pinky will get neglected. It's already the weakest finger, and you're not going to want to use it because it's really awkward, especially when you're getting started, and it's no fun. And if you spend 3 hours in your room when you're just learning how to play and you get really good at some riff, but you're not using the pinky, and then you try to use the pinky and then it feels like, oh man, I'm no good now that I use my pinky, it's really easy to just not use it. But it's already weak, it's already an uphill battle with this thing, and if you can develop it to be as good as it can be, it's really going to enhance your playing. So don't shy away from the pinky. For everything that you do, make sure you're trying to incorporate it and trying to make sure it stays strong and stays versatile. So let's get into our first exercise. 6 strings on most guitars. They are labeled as follows: the low E, the A, the D, the G, the B, and the E. Now you'll notice I called this top one the low E. This is because tonally the note is lower, even though as you're holding it the string is physically higher in the air. When I say low versus high, I mean tones. I don't mean the physical position, because you could be holding it behind your head or some crazy BS, and who knows what string is lowest at that point. This is always the low E. This is the high E. As you wrap your hand around the neck here and you start kind of trying to reach these strings, and I'm sure you've messed around with it a little bit, you're going to notice it's kind of harder to get to this low E string than it is to deal with this one, because you got to wrap your hand all the way around and skip all those other ones. So this very first one, and this is the only time I'm going to be nice to you, we're just going to focus on the high E string. Now if you take a look as I'm talking about the pick position here, you can probably see it. You can flat pick it like this, or you can kind of angle it a bit and it glides across the string a bit better, not quite as much resistance. So kind of pay attention to that. And don't worry about if the other strings happen to be ringing out. That's something we'll lock in later. Right now, all we're worried about is kind of getting you used to the idea of fretting a note and then picking the note at the same time. So we're going to start on this high E. We're going to start by playing an open string, which means that we're not fretting any note. Then we're going to take our index finger and we're going to fret the 2nd fret. Now when you fret, you see there's a whole bunch of space right in there. What you want to do is do it as close to that fret as possible, because what you're doing is you're creating a tension point. And if that tension point is back here, the angle isn't as severe, it doesn't create as much tension, and the note will be kind of muted. Whereas if it's up here, it rings true. Also, you don't want to use the flat of your finger. You want to try and use the tip of the finger. Don't get it caught under your nail or anything like that, but more tip than pad is a good rule of thumb. So once again, we're going to do the open string. Then we're going to use our index finger to fret right up to the 2nd fret there without actually going over it. Use the tip of your finger, and that's the 2nd fret. We're going to play that. So far we have open, 2nd fret. Then what we're going to do is use our middle finger to fret the 3rd fret in the same manner. And then we're going to use our pinky. Already we're getting into the pinky. Up at the 5th fret here, same thing. So the whole thing so far is. One thing to keep in mind, as you fret a higher note, that's where the tension point is. If you still have your finger fretting the note behind it, that's okay. It doesn't matter. You can either leave it there or take it off. It's up to you. So you could play it and leave all fingers on the fretboard, or you could do it one at a time. And so the riff so far is open string, which is a 0, 2, 3, 5, and it's going to be no finger, index finger, middle finger, pinky finger. And then we're going to walk it back down. So. You've probably noticed it's incredibly melodic, and especially when I play it, because I invest my emotion and my soul into everything I do on guitar, even if it's this little riff. But do that. Once you feel comfortable with that, what you're going to do is you're going to move up to the 2nd string, the B string. After that, you're comfortable with that, you're going to move up to the next string here, the G string. Then the D. The A. And then the low E. Things to keep in mind with this, when you're first starting, you want to focus on getting the note clear and to ring out. It's about finger positioning, it's about picking it, making sure you're picking the right string, picking it properly. Once you start to get a little comfortable, what you're going to focus more on is timing. Instead of worrying about, okay, is my finger where it should be? All right, am I picking the right string? You want to set a very slow pace and just make sure that it's even from one note to the next and that you're picking pretty much right as your finger is where it needs to be. So you want to set an even pace of like 1, 2, 3, 4. so on. Rhythm's important. As you start slow, you'll start to establish good techniques. You know what they say? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. If you start and right off the bat you're trying to do, it's probably not going to turn out too well. It's going to be sloppy, but you're going to be ingraining those bad patterns. All this is muscle memory. It's about doing it 1,000,000 times and then you're good at it. It's that simple. Just do it 1,000,000 times, right? Anyway, the point is, take it slow, take it even. For the first few times, work on finger position within the fret, making sure that you're picking the right string. And then once that starts to become comfortable, you're going to focus on keeping an even timing and making sure that the right and left hand are working in conjunction with each other. So you're actually getting economic movement with the picking. So that is your first exercise. Now, if you're an intermediate guitarist or you're beyond this point, don't worry. There's a lot more of these videos, but for right now, you've got something to get you up and running, give you something to practice, and hopefully teach you a little bit about the guitar. Be sure to tune in next time for more instructional guitar work at Viking Guitar University. Keep the world metal.